Stopped the ownership takeover of our family ranch from my wife's manipulative mom using small-town connections and a swarm of bees. BF's female BFF said she wouldn't go on our vacation if I came. So he picked her and changed the destination without telling me. So I left his stuff at his house while he was away. My boyfriend wanted to go on vacation this summer to his mom's friend's house in Hawaii with me and his two best friends, 25M and 29F. We had been planning it all spring. And at some point, 25M dropped out of the trip. So it was just the three of us. For context, my boyfriend and I have been dating since November. And it's been serious. We had and still have talked about moving in together. And he has said, and I agree, that this is a long-term situation and that we were in it for the long haul. Early June 1st, 25M unexpectedly dropped out of the trip. 29AF called my boyfriend and told him that it was now just the three of us. That it was just the three of us. She didn't feel comfortable with me going on the trip, because she didn't know me that well. And she didn't want to be a third wheel. She said that if I were to go, she wouldn't go on the trip without telling me that this was happening. They changed the plans and made it a trip. Just the two of them. And they changed the location to a beach in Costa Rica. I was trying to figure out when to ask for time off this summer, and hadn't heard any news about the plans. So I asked my boyfriend what week in August I should set aside for the Hawaii trip. He let me know that talked to his girlfriend, and that she didn't want to go if I was going. So he was going to go to Costa Rica with her alone. He said we could go another week later. Maybe Mexico City or something. I was upset and I tried to talk to him about how I felt about the situation. Especially since this wasn't a case of a separate trip being arranged ahead of time. This was a case of me being invited and then uninvited from a week-long tropical vacation with a friend of his, whom I had never met before. We finally decided to take a trip together to Copenhagen, which we both wanted to visit. As a kind of compensation, I also asked to meet her, so that I could feel more comfortable with the trip. We spent the 4th of July to visit her and her boyfriend in the city where they live. And while it was nice to put a face to a name, it was ultimately a very cold trip. And she was not welcoming to me at all. My friend commented on how unfriendly she was to both of us, he thought, and said that he was surprised that she didn't warm to me. I made an effort to get to know her and her boyfriend. I'm very outgoing and friendly, and normally that would be easy. But it didn't really click. Even after several days, they were also a little cold to each other. They argued a bit about their future on his own 3-week trip without her, which was scheduled for the same time as her trip. This had been planned hours before. This had been my effort to feel better about the trip. So I told my boyfriend that I still didn't feel comfortable with things, and that I felt offended by the way it was handled. I had been trying to make things work between all of us, and I asked him to please come up with something to help me feel better about the trip. On a visit to his family, they asked about the trip, and they were all shocked that he had arranged it that way, and let me know that they would have been furious if they were in my position, which led to an argument in which I asked him to please help me come up with a strategy to make me feel better and safer so that they could go together without me. He said he would never do that again, which feels like not much to offer, because this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime trip. To begin with, he sort of offered not to go on the trip, but he had already paid for the tickets and made the arrangements, and I didn't want to stop their trip and be resented by both him and his best friend. He asked me to give him ideas on how to make me feel better, and wanted me to just tell him what to do. Installed until it was finally the day of the trip. He bought me a bag of peanut butter cups, and I drove them both to the airport. I feel so and disrespected in this situation. I want to break up with him, but I don't want to burn up something that was otherwise been really good. Update. I was really upset the day I broke up with him, and he texted me, but I didn't respond. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do anything in the state that I was in. I waited until the next day, and then I sent him a thoughtful text, letting him know that I didn't feel safe or loved in the way the trip was being handled, and that I would be dropping off his things at his place and leave his keys with a neighbor. He called but didn't leave a message, and then he left me a message that he didn't understand. The rest of the week, he called and left me a message, but I couldn't bring myself to answer or text back. On Thursday, I think he realized I was serious and asked me some questions about logistical things. I told him which neighbor his key was with, etc. When he came back and saw all his stuff at his place, he got pretty and called me and left me a long message. I worked all day, but I still didn't want to answer. He asked me to explain, because he didn't understand what was going on. The next day, I sent another text to make it clear that it was over, and he got upset and sent me a bunch of texts in a row about how he didn't understand why I was throwing away everything we had built. He left me a really angry voicemail, saying that he had no idea why I was upset, and that he could not accept the breakup because he had no say in it, and that he wanted me to tell him the made-up story about him to his face. I didn't want to answer him, and I wanted to stay calm, but this upset me. So I sat down and wrote him this letter. It's long, so skip ahead if you want. I tried to call him, but I started to cry and told him. I just sent him an email instead. This is what it said. The time that we had together has given me some good space and time to think. I had a chance to think about the things that are important to me in a relationship. And I see that we should not be together. I am sorry that I asked you to change things about your life that you shouldn't have to change at my behest or anyone else's. From the very beginning, this journey has been made in an insanely disrespectful way, in which it began with you being given an ultimatum from your best friend, whom I had never met, that either she was going or I was going on this trip, and you chose her. You didn't offer to let her meet me. In theory, I was your long-term partner, so that would have made a lot of sense. You didn't encourage her to find someone else to go with her, and you didn't consult me at all. That's enough for most people to have a deal breaker. But I stayed right there. This is a person with whom you have a history. That is not entirely clear to me. Here is what I understand. Some bad rumors started about the two of you where you spent an entire night with her on an acid trip while you were dating someone else. Somebody else, nothing happened. The other thing I understand is that you were romantically interested in her at some theoretically different point. That she started dating her boyfriend and then shut the door on things for you, according to what I also understand. It took a long time for 29's boyfriend to feel comfortable with you being around. But you seem to be working to finally make him feel comfortable with you. After, I'm not sure how long. This is the completely unknown person who shut me out of a trip I was originally going to go on. Unilateral decision. You did not tell me this happened until I asked when the trip to Hawaii would be purchased tickets. In another very disrespectful situation, in which I have cooked dinner and have guests present, And you decide to go to my room for well over an hour to pick out tickets with her. And where I keep asking you to please come to dinner. Because you say it will only take a few more minutes each time. There is absolutely no reason to do this at this time. And in this situation, seeing as she is in the same time zone as us and has a 9-to-5 job, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. So to make myself feel better about this whole arrangement, I tell you that I want to meet this person. At my request, we will arrange a trip to meet her and her boyfriend. A short trip where they are. And you explicitly agree. Inexplicably cold. The first conversation we have is one in which 29AF and her boyfriend are arguing about how she made him feel, while he was already in a relationship and got him to date her instead. You tell me about conversations 29AF had with you recently, in which it seems implied that there is some real instability in your long-term relationship. Stuff about kids and dogs. I have a conversation in which I let you know that I see this and that it worries me. Meanwhile, I still want all this to work out for you and for me. And for them. At this point, plan to be with you for the long haul. And see no advantage in telling you not to go on a trip with your best friend. I want it to work out. But every single interaction surrounding this trip chips and chips away at my ability to deal with it. The conversations that seem to go nowhere, etc. Your dad, your mom, and your grandparents are all very surprised when we tell them about this trip. It becomes very obvious that this is a dangerous journey. With the fragility of our relationship, 29M, we had only been together for 9 months. How long did it take before 29's boyfriend felt comfortable with you hanging around? Much less go on an international tropical vacation where he was uninvited. At your request, we go over it with a friend at the climbing gym. We go over it in the car. We go over it while booking our Airbnb for Copenhagen. We go over it when I tell you that I still uncomfortable and not feeling good about the trip. About the trip. Talk about saying something repeatedly. Even though I asked you to help me. When in fact you asked me instead to think of something that would make me feel better. Surprisingly, I have no ideas either. In the end, it seems that the original plan to meet at my place and hang out and have a game night before you two left has been cancelled. And 29F will be staying at my place, but not hang out with us at all before that. You attribute this to you not bringing it up with her. Obviously not early enough. Something that was even discussed 2 nights before the trip. This upsets me. You do not know what to do. I don't blame you at this point. It got out of hand. I don't know what to do either. There is no good solution I can think of, except to wait for the trip to end. I'm telling you, either I have to get over it, or I have to break up with you. And that I don't want to break up with you. But my ability to get over it is rather worn down. She arrives at my place very late. And we wake up the next morning for me to take you both to the airport. After all that lead up, I know you can tell how unhappy I am. I know you can tell how unhappy I am. You leave. And when I don't respond to your texts, you text me to say that you hope I'm okay. And you go to bed. No call. The rest of the week was rough. My text to you was essentially, I'm sorry you feel that way. You tell me I'm being unfair. There is no acknowledgement. And there still hasn't been. That this trip is a fucking honeymoon destination. As we discussed before. Might be a crazy and horrible thing to do. Even with my quasi-blessing. This is not something that people in relationships have to deal with. This is not something that people in relationships do. Except for 29F, I guess. In the end, All of this is to say that I felt serious. Emotional needs are being seriously. In a way that is a deal breaker for me. There have been some wonderful, very positive times. But there has been an unnecessary amount of heartache and suffering. And suffering for me. Over things that can only be attributed to what I can only assume to be personal differences. I cannot deal with your relationship with 29F. And I suppose I could ask you to choose between her and me. But I don't want to do that. I want you to have your best friend and I want to go. I did love you. But I will not fight this battle. And here you are telling me that I'm crazy for not seeing how completely platonic everything is. For the rest of my life. It seems like trying to convince someone to like different food. Or have a different favorite color. I am not happy about it. And I do not want to feel those feelings anymore. It does not have to be mutual. I don't need your permission to break up with you. He wrote me back an apologetic email in which he took responsibility for most things. Without any argument. Except that he denied everything that had to do with his relationship with her. Which made me feel uncomfortable. And he denied that I was able to handle their relationship. He said that the only thing that made her trip bad for me was my own perspective. I wrote him back that trust needs to be built. And that he was putting too much pressure too soon on a relationship where we had not developed that trust. He agreed and apologized. For me, it ended on a pretty amicable note. But this kind of relationship really doesn't work for me. And I don't feel like his reactions to me have really healed or changed anything significantly. I stand by my decision at this time. Next story, fiancé refused to tell her male best friend about our engagement. When I confronted her, she texted him that I was engaged, but not anymore. Right in front of me. My now ex-fiancé, 30F and I am 27, got engaged 3 weeks ago. We have been together for 5 years. And I finally got the money to give her the wedding she wanted. Wanted so much. 3 days ago, we were discussing our guest list. And I asked her if she wanted to invite her best friend. Let's call him James M30. James lives in another state. But since they have been friends for 10 years, I thought I could even pay for his travel expenses. It would be great to have her best friend there. At the wedding. She refused. And said that it would be a lot of work to bring him. And that she wanted it to be a family event. Countless times. She mentioned that James was like family to her. So I insisted. She got angry and said I hadn't even told him we were engaged. That took me by surprise. I tried to ask why. But she started to stonewall me and I left her alone. After a couple of hours, I tried to ask her again why she hadn't told him we were engaged. And she still refused to tell me. And I admit, my insecurity got the better of me. In the past, James had confessed that he had feelings for her, which she denied, and he was basically a friend. But the way she told it to me, it always sounded like she had him as a backup. Something that not only me, but her exes realized. She married him online. She always made the like a couple. Like wearing the same transmog and shit. When she had a fight with her exes, he was always there for her and stuff. I told her that made me uncomfortable. And if she was not going to tell him, she might as well consider herself single. Because I wouldn't marry someone who couldn't be honest. Yes, I was pretty immature. But she did something even more immature. She texted him while showing me her phone. Something like, "Hey. Just so you know, I was engaged but not anymore," and sent it to him. I told her to pack her things and get out of my house. Since she left, she called me but I refused to answer. My mom called me. Because apparently she called my mom. And said that I was an asshole for breaking things off. For such a ridiculous thing. Ida. Update 1. Hey guys, I just got home after talking to my still ex-fiancé. And since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. But I want to clarify a few things. As commented in my original post, I have been paying for the house since I bought it. Before I started dating her, and I asked her to move in because it was close to her job. I work from home since I'm in tech, but she had to go to work. So I paid for her car to help her commute. And honestly, her salary sucks. I was her partner, so I didn't see a problem with that. I still thought she was the one. She is smart, funny. We had chemistry, but I felt betrayed by the update. We met at a coffee shop. On the premise, we were going to discuss how to save our relationship. Or so she thought. As soon as we sat down, I asked to see her texts. She immediately got defensive and told me that she had deleted everything. I still asked to see her phone. She started crying ugly and asked me to stop. At that point, I had already decided I was not going to be a part of this relationship anymore. But damn, I was curious. It took a good 20 minutes before she gave me her phone. A lot of crying. Even a waitress asked her if she was okay. So I read the messages. There was no cheating like exchanging nudes. They were professing their love for each other. But what I read still hurt. There was a lot of shit said about me. A lot. Texts and texts from them saying what a horrible person I was. I was criticized for my hobbies. I like pro wrestling video games. Saying I wasn't a real man because of them and stuff like that. Things like that, but there were two topics that caught my eye. One where she had told him that I had trouble getting hard. And that was frustrating to her. And one where she complained about how she didn't want to be stuck in our relationship. Yes, I had problems in bed. Because I was sad because my father had died 6 months ago, and the stuck thing. I remember telling her that when we got married, if she wanted, she could quit her job. And I would support both of us. I don't know if she took that the wrong way. But I think it had something to do with that. I honestly don't know. By the time I returned the phone to her, she was already making excuses as to why she said those things to him. How he was like a therapist to her. And then she asked me, "Don't you complain about me to your friends?" And I just said no. I don't. She started crying again. I took a pretty deep breath and just said, "Just give me the ring back." I didn't have the ring with me like some people suggested. She hesitated a bit but gave it to me anyway. I stood up and asked her to delete my number. And to stop bothering me. I called her mother. And asked her to pick up her daughter's things at my place. At my place. Her mom is a good person. I just realize I'm going to miss her. As I write this, she understood why I chose to end it. But she didn't ask much. And to be honest, I'm glad she didn't. As for my mom, I haven't called her. I just blocked her for things unrelated to this post. I just realized that she never had my back in anything. I was always trying to save an already failed mother-son relationship. Before I go, I just want to be clear. I was never against her having male friends. Or any kind of friends. People are going to cheat on friends or no friends. I remember my father saying something to me when I was a teenager. He used to say that opportunity makes the thief. But I do not agree with that. Anyway, since I have the next 2 weeks off, I am going to figure out what to do with the wedding money. Drink some booze. Play some games and watch Monday Night Raw later. Peace. Edit. A few people are asking about the car. Is a 2015 Nissan Versa that she crashed 2 times. Both times she rear-ended someone. Never liked the car. Weak engine, interior feels cheap and overall bad. So for all I care she can keep the piece of shit. I would have more luck throwing it off a cliff than selling it. Edit 2, small update. Her mother called me a few hours ago to check on me and ask when she could come and pick up excess stuff. We talked about the car, and she basically told me to let her daughter keep the car because 1. I paid for it, 2. X wouldn't be able to maintain it. So I'm going to keep the car until I can sell it. God help me too. Some people called the story fake because they said I wasn't a real man for playing games. And yet they played. Wow. To be honest, that's on me because I wasn't very clear. The real man thing was more about the pro wrestling hobby than the gaming hobby. But in some messages, they were clearly mocking me for playing some games. Life is Strange series. In one, I remember James saying something like, "How could a grown man play such a girly game?" And crying, "Yeah, I cried when I played Life is Strange. I also cried during RDR. The Fearless cutscene still makes me emotional. I guess I'm a crybaby." I also want to thank everyone who messaged me about wrestling and games. It really helped me take my mind off everything. I haven't replied to everyone yet, but I intend to. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Be good, guys. Update 2. Hey guys. It's been a few days since I used this account to tell my story. And something has happened. But this is a positive update. First, I want to say thanks to everyone who replied to my DMS and commented and said nice things. It felt really good and I really appreciate it. Some of you actually made me cry with your kind messages. Second, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who gave me advice, told me your own story, or just told me I was a cool guy. Reading your messages before I wrote this felt amazing. I also want to say that I have thought a lot about my engagement, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Yeah. It ended badly and she was not a good person to me in the end. But I just don't hate her. Nor do I wish her failure. We had good moments. I felt happy with her. And again, I really thought she was the one. Feeling hatred would hurt me more than it would hurt her. To the update. Her mom came to get her stuff. And we talked for hours. It felt like therapy. I cried on her shoulders. We laughed and she expressed how much I meant to her family. And that I was always welcome in their home. It felt so good to hear her say these things to me. Before she left, she asked me if I wanted to ask her about my ex. I was curious and asked how she was doing. Her words were that she's trying to be stoic. But I know my daughter, she's not taking it well. I left it at that. She hugged me and left. About the car. I'm going to donate it and get a tax write-off right away. But the thing I'm excited about is that I'm going to Royal Rumble. I never watched Raw or SmackDown live. But now that I have the extra money, I'm going to treat myself again. Thank you all for reaching out. Sorry to the people who love drama. That this update does not have an unwanted pregnancy, a fight, chaos or a plot twist. The truth is that my life is just really, really boring. Be kind, people.